Damn. The end of the year already. I was seeing outside looks a little... Let's huddle up with some warm cocoa and talk about some non-German S-Bahn systems. Because, I wanna. Really doesn't have anything to do with the holidays at all, does it? To keep it interesting, so I'm not just talking about Austria and Switzerland for the next however many minutes, I'm limiting this to just one network per country. Number 10 is a little bit of a weird one. And before we go on, I should probably answer the age-old question, what even is an S-Bahn? And for that I have one of two possible criteria. The first is rather simply is that it's a regional or metro rail service that the operator outright calls an S-Bahn system. Whether it fits the technical description or not, well, that's up for debate. The second possible criteria is that it resembles a more traditional German-defined S-Bahn system. That means one or more multiple city center tunnels with metro-like frequencies, services that go at least for most of the route from surrounding area to surrounding area instead of stretching out like spokes from the center. Regular service that, while not perhaps as frequent as a metro, is certainly better than a few trains in the morning and a few in the evening. Also, I'm not much going to be going over every aspect of each network, but rather some key statistics and interesting facts. Now, here's Mario and Sonic kissing. Number 1, Vienna. Austria, being culturally similar to South Germany and all, is no stranger to S-Bahn systems. In fact, they have some of the most unique setups across all the countries we're looking at today, with several systems having multiple operators, several cross-border routes, and tons of ongoing expansion work. In fact, the youngest system in Austria, the Oberösterreich S-Bahn, only first went into service at the end of 2016 and already has 5 operating lines with 2 more on the way. But if I'm talking about Austria, I need to talk about the most famous and most heavily used system, the Vienna S-Bahn. Now, like a lot of German cities, Vienna has both more suburban S-Bahn services and more metro-esque U-Bahn services. The U-Bahn is run by the Wiener Linien. Yes, that's the name. Truly the best name I've ever heard for a railway company. We love the Wiener lines here. The S-Bahn, however, is run by Austrian state operator ÖBB, who you may know from their night jet services that take sleeping passengers all over Europe. First opened in 1962, the Vienna S-Bahn currently has 10 lines stretching over 650 kilometers, servicing over 300,000 passengers a day. Despite being an S-Bahn, the network runs at metro-like frequencies on a lot of its routings, especially in the city center. This is aided by the main city center rail corridor, the Stammstrecke, giving frequent service between Meidling and Floresdorf, with a notable major stop at Wien Hauptbahnhof. However, there's one very notable route that completely bypasses the Stammstrecke, and that's the S45. This one's actually special in a few ways. I've heard some people describe it as more inner-urban-esque, and some as more metro-esque. Even on Vienna metro maps, it's separated from the rest of the S-Bahn with its own unique green logo and line color. The S45, also known as the Vorarlberg, literally the suburban line, is the only S-Bahn line to stay fully within the city limits of Vienna and not stretch into the surrounding areas. Despite trains coming up very respectable every 10 minutes, they are a bit smaller than many others found on other lines, due to many of the platforms on this route being shorter than on those other lines. It also forms a nice northern arc around a lot of the city, making it a really nice counter to the main trunk line. Finally, while a good few extensions are currently planned, one that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon is the proposed S7 extension to neighboring Bratislava, Slovakia, which is a real shame, though Bratislava is thankfully already just a short regional train trip away. Number 2, Zurich. Moving on to our next country, let's talk about Switzerland. Like Austria, Switzerland also has a good few S-Bahn systems, though depending on a region and whether it's a German-speaking or Italian-speaking or French-speaking region, they may instead opt for the more French moniker of RER. That acronym is a surprise tool that'll come back to help us later, by the way. I like Switzerland. They have some of the most beautiful and punctual train lines in the world. Besides, their flag is a big plus, am I right? Originally, when making this video, I was thinking about discussing the Bern S-Bahn, only because it's the one Swiss system to actually use a cool looking S logo like the German lines do. But when it comes down to it, I just had to talk about Zurich. Zurich may just have one of the most insane S-Bahn systems in the world. At times it feels like they're really stretching the meaning of what an S-Bahn can be. Perhaps it had to, as the proposed Zurich U-Bahn never got built. This is a truly world-class system. and it's also kind of a weird one. Sure, we have shared city center core tunnels and rights-of-ways along with integrated lines, but it's oh so much more. Can S-Bahn trains have first-class compartments? Well, in Zurich they can, and in Frankfurt too, I guess. Well, how about a completely separate set of lines that operate at night? Well, that happens in Zurich as well. What about renaming entire lines to be less confusing? Because your network is so expansive, it extends into other city territories and even into Germany. Yeah, that happened in Zurich. By the way, the route in question for that last bit was the S1 line, which was then renamed to the S21 and discontinued and partially brought back as the S24 due to the Lucerne S-Bahn having an S1 route and that being extensive enough and close enough to Zurich that the local transit authorities in Zurich were worried about that being confusing to commuters. And what about the actual trains? Can S-Bahn trains be double-decker? Can they be trams? Can they have two side-by-side sets of pantographs so they can operate across different voltages and power types? And of course, because this is Switzerland, most trains operate on super strict tax scheduling. And thanks to that sweet, sweet Swiss efficiency that comes with a 97% on-time percentage. Deutsche Bahn, please take some goddamn notes. It's a monster of a network with 380 kilometers of track and more than 170 stations. Oh, and on a final note, I want to mention the S27 line, which goes through both the St. Gallen transit area, if I pronounce that right, and the Zurich S-Bahn area, and it's actually part of neither network. They just decided to call it the S27, and it's run by private operators strictly during rush hour periods. Damn, Switzerland is weird. Number 3. Copenhagen. So moving back north to a country I really love to visit, let's talk about Denmark's best S-train network, the Copenhagen S-Tog, which is perhaps an easy accolade to get as it's Denmark's only S-train network. That said, I'm actually really fond of Copenhagen's S-Tog for a few reasons. Even if the trains aren't necessarily the best maintained, network forms kind of a hand shape, with the F-line forming a nice radial line through part of it. I believe I've also heard news of building another radial line farther out, perhaps as some sort of express tram. This system started in 1934, making it one of the oldest S-Bahn systems outside of Germany. The network serves not just Copenhagen itself, but the surrounding metropolitan area. If you look at this map of the S-Tog, you'll notice most of the lines seem to be doubled up. This allows express services on different sections. Basically, one train runs local and the other runs express in the north, and then they switch when they cross south. There's also great linkage with Copenhagen's recently expanded fully automated metro system. As someone who used to go to Vancouver a lot, this always reminded me a little bit of the SkyTrain. I guess in reality, it's more of an idea of things that come with Hamburg's U5 line. And of course, we've got to talk about the S-Tog's expansion plans. The F-line is going to get upgraded and become driverless, new trains are going to be ordered soon to replace the older ones from 1996, and there's even talks to expand the network to Copenhagen Airport, though I'll believe it when I see it. On one final note, I truly love how funky the S-Tog trains look. They bow out a bit on either side, and inside have large benches that can fit up to 3 people each. If I had to compare it to anything anywhere else, I'd say it kind of reminds me of some of the RB trains that operate around Cologne that have that weird 3+1 seating arrangement. Number 4, Prague. I'm really happy to get to talk about Czechia now because despite Prague's many problems, I'm actually really on board with riding České dráhy. I rode some of their long distance services to Berlin whenever it's cheaper and more convenient to do so than riding with Deutsche Bahn, and I must say, every time I've been impressed. Czech viewers, let me know if I'm being not critical enough here. I can go harder if you want. Unlike some other systems on this list, Prague's S-Bahn, officially called the Esko network, is relatively new, having been established in 1992. Heh, kind of rhymed. This network is notable for its extensive coverage, not just of Prague, but the wider central Bohemian region. What's also cool about Prague's S-Bahn is how it managed to blend new and old, with modern trains running alongside older Soviet-era rolling stock. Of the 33 lines and nearly 1,200 kilometers of trackage, only 735 kilometers of that is in Prague proper. The longest single journey you can make on Esko without changing trains is the S7 line. This route is over 60 kilometers long and takes you on a scenic journey through the Czech countryside, as well as through the bustling city center of Prague. Over 130,000 people use this network on a daily basis. Some lines, like in Copenhagen, run express services. The Esko system is also seamlessly integrated with the Prague Metro, which means you can easily switch from a suburban Esko train to a metro line without leaving the station. On one final note, let's talk about one of my favorite weird features of any transit network, though honestly the less of it a network has, the better probably. Ghost stations. There are a few stations in the Esko network that are partially built but have never been fully opened or underused, leading to local legends and speculations. Stations like Prague, is that right? Have platforms that seem to be waiting for more frequent service, creating a bit of a spooky atmosphere when passing through. 5. Milan. Moving south, let's go to Italy.
Arrivederci.
Get that shit out of here. These are, and they are routes most commonly just called the Milan S-Lines, paying homage to the German S-Bahn moniker. The Milan S-Lines officially started service in 2004, and the system is made up of 12 lines that radiate out from the city to the surrounding Lombardy region, perhaps a bit more similar to a traditional commuter train network like, say, Metro. The Passante Ferroviaria, goddamn I probably butchered that, is a central underground tunnel and is the backbone of the system, allowing suburban lines across the city without having to change direction. One interesting thing about the Milan S-Bahn, S-Line system, is how it integrates with the region's heavy rail services, making it possible to travel from small towns like Treviglio or Sorano directly into the heart of Milan. It's essentially a hybrid system, blurring the lines between regional and urban rail. Question for the viewers, just to break it up. Do you like this style of video? Or do you prefer the ones where I stick to covering things more on location? Anyways, also, looking at scheduling around the world has really made me realize just how loose what an S-Bahn system can be defined. I guess it really does just come down to, yeah, they call them S-trains. Number 6, Brussels. You know, funny enough, I just watched Arm Transit's video on Brussels at the making of this. Brussels, de facto capital of the EU. Sorry about the German government's recent land border decision. Schengen is very valuable. Anyways, let's talk about a type of system that is often just seen as the French version of the S-Bahn, RAR systems, though in this case they actually do use S numbers. I guess the main difference is RARs typically have S-Bahn-esque services between city centers and suburbs, but often have more confusing, less clarified routing. Well, I guess if Paris has anything to go on anyways. We'll come back to that. The Brussels S-Bahn, the Brussels RAR, Réseau Express Régional, is in its developmental stages still. Although the concept has been around since the 90s, the Brussels RAR has faced numerous delays in political wrangling, and it's only now starting to resemble what we'd see as a proper S-Bahn network. What's particularly interesting here is the Schumann-Josaphat Tunnel, vital link that was completed in 2016 and now allows for a much more integrated and frequent service across the city. The Brussels RAR is a work in progress, yes, absolutely, but it's fascinating to see how it's slowly evolving to a more comprehensive system, especially in a city known for its complicated political structure. This is definitely one I'll be following as it further grows. Number 7? Is this 7? I think? Maybe 8? I'm losing track. Paris. On the topic of RARs, especially since I just dogged on how its lines are routed, let's talk about the Paris RAR. When I say routings, I mean just how all the different train routings that can share lines and are displayed on maps, not the way the trains are actually run. Even though there's a bit of a learning curve into actually using this system, it's a vastly useful network. It's part commuter rail, part metro, and part high-speed regional line, sort of. The RAR's A and B lines in particular function very similar to German S-Bahn systems, especially like Hamburg's S5, but a bit more usable. And I gotta say that because I complained about it a lot, and deservedly so. Also, on the topic of Paris, I feel obligated to mention the Gare du Nord station, which is the only station in Europe busier than the Hamburg Hauptbahnhof. Number 8. Warsaw. Moving from a country to the west of Germany to one east of Germany, let's talk about Poland. Is it just me or does Poland get overlooked a lot in transit discussions? It's a shame as they have a lot of cool transit stuff over there. You know, Gdansk is often one of the cheapest trips you can take from Hamburg, with flights sometimes being as low as $9, and it's a city with robust public transport. We're talking ferries, trams, and even the SKM commuter network, often seen as the Polish equivalent to an S-Bahn. And actually, if we're going to dive into SKM services, let's move on from Gdansk to the Polish capital, Warsaw. Honestly, just looking at a map of the Warsaw SKM network, it's very obviously a traditional S-Bahn system at heart, close in resemblance to its German cousins. Established in 2005, Warsaw's SKM network is a relatively young system, but what makes it so interesting is how it complements the city's metro and tram networks, with trains also running on tracks share with other long-distance and regional trains. The S2 and 3 lines are particularly noteworthy here, if only because they provide crucial connections between the city center and Warsaw Chopin Airport. Despite its youth, the Warsaw SKM system is actually growing rapidly, and it's a great example of how new infrastructure can be integrated into existing urban layouts. It's also just a good dang system. I guess this entire section was just a chance for me to gush about Poland a little bit. Number 9, San Francisco. This one's gonna piss a lot of people off. Yeah, let's move to North America. No, not literally. I like it in Germany. Please don't send me back. For this section, I'm not talking about Go Transit or Metra or that big-ass purple T commuter network in Boston. Those are proper commuter services and deserve better frequencies than what we currently have. No, in Germany, I think those would be operated as Regiobahn or Regio Express routes. The US and Canada really don't have anything actually strictly like an S-Bahn, with one major exception. This is BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit Network. Hell yeah, San Francisco and the surrounding areas. And here's the thing, for getting around the San Francisco Bay Area, BART, which often seems advertised as a high-capacity metro network, is really mediocre when viewed that way. But if you see it as the one and only more proper North American S-Bahn, that tracks better. Just replace shared intercity tunnel with Transbay tube, and yeah, that more or less fits the technical definition of an S-Bahn we went over earlier. BART serves a large metropolitan area, connecting San Francisco with the East Bay, including Oakland and Berkeley, and operates on a schedule and frequency that resembles some European S-Bahn systems. The trains are also certainly very high capacity and pretty comfortable too. They run on wide gauge track, which I'm sure aids in said capacity by letting the trains be physically bigger than if they were standard gauge. And yes, I really am arguing that BART is like an S-Bahn. I'm serious about that. And yes, it does have some very special American Metro jank. Why are there diesel trains serving one part of one route? Why are those diesel trains called E-BART, despite that being the only non-electric part of the system? Why did you build a big new transit center in San Francisco not connected to BART at all? Why are there stations and highway medians? What the hell, California? That just seems inhuman. Oh, and does this airport people mover connection really count as a BART line? You know, I do think BART is on the whole a very usable system, and some of the future expansion plans are pretty good, especially with links to California high-speed rail on the horizon. You know, I think on the whole I actually like this system. Number 10. Liechtenstein. Finally, let's move back to Europe and talk about an international S-Bahn network. Very specifically, one particular line of a bigger network. This is a network that spans 4 countries, even if, on paper, it's just meant to serve the Austrian state of Vorarlberg. The S1 route extends all the way north into Germany. The S4 has a completely different operator from the rest of the network. And then there's the S2 route, the reason this system is on this list. This line goes all the way into Switzerland via Liechtenstein. Yes, this is the one and only S-Bahn route that goes through teeny tiny little Liechtenstein here. This also means that the Vorarlberg S-Bahn pretty much connects all major German-speaking nations in Europe.
Missed.
This is one I want to do a ride the whole network video on someday. Don't you just love the Schengen border-free area? God, I hope someone from the German government sees this. Anyway, the Vorarlberg S2 line is crucial for cross-border commuters and is a unique example of how small regions can still benefit from S-Bahn services. Plus, it's not every day you hear about an S-Bahn line serving a country with fewer than 40,000 residents. Just a shame that the more robust S-Bahn Liechtenstein plan seems to have been axed. It always makes me sad to see transit expansions decided against. Good transit benefits everyone, damn it. Yes, even car drivers. Hey you, person angrily typing with an F-250 in the garage, more transit equals fewer drivers on the road, equaling less traffic for you. So, here's a question I got. Hey Jamie, you're Jewish, are we getting a Christmas special? To which I say, what, was this not good enough for you? Happy holidays, I'm gonna go get some glue wine.